In this lecture, we'll set up some basic player input using an action map and use that input to get our player moving around our game. Let's start by creating a new action map from scratch. In our assets folder, I'm going to go ahead and create a new empty folder that I'll just call input. In this folder, let's right-click create, and at the very bottom, we'll find an input actions. Let's just go ahead and call this player controls. And let's double-click this input actions to open it up. We've already done this before, but let's go through it again. On the very left, let's create a new action map that let's just call player. On our actions column, let's go ahead and rename this action to move. On the very right, underneath action properties, let's change this action type from button to pass through to make sure that our control type can be set to vector2 to make sure that we can get both an X and a Y value. Now, it's a little bit confusing because we're going to be using our X value for moving left and right, and our Y value is actually going to be controlling the Z value of our player, basically forward to back. Underneath move, let's go ahead and open that up. Let's just delete this binding. With move selected, let's click this little plus icon and add an up, down, left, right composite so we have 4 different buttons to use. You don't actually need to rename this one, but I'm just going to rename this one WASD just in case you want to add any other input actions for, say, like a game controller or something along those lines. For up, down, left, and right, let's just start with up over here on our binding, path, listen, and W. Click down, path, and S for down, left, path, listen, A, and right, path, listen, D. WASD, all set up. That's actually all we need for our action map. Let's make sure we save our asset and we can go ahead and close this window. With our player selected, let's add a new component. On here, we want to create a new player input. We just want to drag this new input actions asset directly into this actions field here. Previously, we explored using the behavior broadcast messages. For the sake of learning something new, let's actually go through how to set this up, invoking Unity events. Once you have invoke Unity events selected, you can go ahead and click this other drop-down events, and you'll expose 3 different built-in Unity events. Unity events for when our device is lost or our control scheme is changed. Don't mind that for now. What we want to pay attention to at the moment is our custom action map that we created, this other drop-down that you can see here called player. So on our player, let's create a new C# script. We'll go ahead and right-click create in our scripts folder a new mono behavior script called player controller. Once that's compiled, we can go ahead and once again click our player game object and just drag our player controller as a component onto this specific game object. Now, unlike before when we were broadcasting messages, we don't necessarily have to have a function explicitly called onMove. We can create any public method we'd like and rig it up so when we use the input from our move action, it will fire that event. We can additionally pass through this callback context info that you can see here next to our move function to make sure that we're actually returning the vector2 value that we want to get from our action map to actually do something with that input. Enough jibber jabber, I think. Let's go ahead and open up our player controller to rig that up. With our player controller open, let's go ahead and delete both our start and update method, and let's just create a public void function. We can call it whatever we'd like, but let's just call it move. Inside of move, we want to get some additional information from that callback context. We gain access to that by going into input action. You can see when you autocomplete that, it'll automatically import the input system namespace. That's great. After input action, dot callback context, which again is just that information that we saw in the inspector. We can just call that context. Similar to before, we just want to store this vector2 value that we're going to get from our input in a vector2. So at the very top of our class, let's create a movement vector2. Inside of our move function, let's set movement equal to context.readValue, and we want to read the vector2 value that we're getting from our callback context. So very similar syntax to how we were getting this similar information when we were broadcasting messages. When you're broadcasting messages, it's something like get vector2. When you're using the callback context, you're actually going in and reading the value with .read value and getting that vector2 value. Great, let's just make sure that's rigged up correctly and use a debug.log, and we'll just debug.log our movement vector2, just to make sure we're getting those input values correctly back in Unity. Let's go try that out. With our events and our player open, with this action exposed, you can just drag this player controller component directly into this field here. And using this drop down, go into player controller. And then at the very top, you have our publicly exposed function called move. Great. Let's just go ahead and select that. Click play. And when you use the WASD keys, you should be returning different values. So when you're holding left, you should see -1. When you're holding right, you should see +1 on the X value, W, +1 on the Y, and holding S, you should see a -1 on the Y value. Great, we can now use those values to get our character moving around using a rigid body. Because this is going to be a physics-based endless runner and we're going to be interacting with other rigid body physics objects in our game, I think it makes sense to also move our player with a rigid body. So let's add a rigid body component. With this rigid body component added, let's just make sure we untick gravity, and we can modify some of these other settings a little bit later on, which will introduce us to this lecture's challenge. Move our player's rigid body using move position in fixed update. Now I'll make sure I leave the docs to move position if you're not familiar with this built-in Unity method, but you call this by going into the rigid body.move position, in which you'll need to pass through a vector3 value. And just as a reminder, because we're dealing with rigid body physics, you'll want to use fixed update as opposed to update. But here are a few nice steps to help get you there. To help find the vector3 we'd like to pass through our move position method, you'll need to first find the current position. Need another vector3 for the move direction, so you can use the movement vector2 that we've created to help get you there. You'll also want to define some sort of move speed float. I'd recommend creating that as a serialized field up top so you can modify that in the inspector. And just as a reminder, you want to make things frame rate independent. So now's the time to pause the video. Give it your best shot. I'll see you back here in a few moments and we'll go through my solution together. All right, I think I have everything I need here. Let's go ahead and open back up our player controller. I'm going to get rid of our debug.log. Don't need that anymore. I'm just going to start by getting a reference to our rigid body. So I'm going to define that up top. I'll go into rigid body and just call that rigid body with a lowercase r. And I'm just going to go ahead and instead of getting that as a serialized field, I'm just going to go ahead and snag that directly in awake. As a good rule of thumb, it can be a good idea to get references on your own game object in awake as opposed to start, and get references to other game objects that might be in our scene in start. It can be a good rule of thumb to avoid any sorts of race conditions you might have in between classes. So in awake, I'm going to go ahead and grab my rigid body and set that equal to get component rigid body, since we know that component is directly attached to the same game object as our player controller. And instead of update, I'm going to use fixed update. So I'm going to create a void fixed update. And inside here, I'll create another method that I'll just call handle movement. And we can create that down below our public methods. So handle movement, open close parentheses. And in here is where we actually finally want to do our logic to move our rigid body. With our handle movement method created, I find it helpful to often work backwards. So I know I want to use rigid body.move position. So I'll go ahead and just create that first, .move position. And I know I'm going to need to pass through some sort of vector3. Well, what is that vector3? I'm going to need some sort of position to move to. Let's start by first finding our current position. So I'll define a vector3 called current position, and I'm going to grab my rigid body.position. And you might be asking yourself, why am I using rigid body.position instead of transform.position, or what's the difference? Well, transform.position is the default way to get the current vector3 of an object in world space in our scene. However, because we're going to be moving things in fixed update with a rigid body, it's a good idea to use rigid body.position, which is still returning the same vector3, but again, they're operating on slightly different loop cycles. So you might have some small precision errors between the two. Once you have the current position, let's grab a move direction, which is kind of like the input we used above, except we need to change that into a vector3 that we can use for our rigid body. So let's define another vector3 called move direction. And inside here, we'll create a new vector3. For our x, I just want to use my movement.x input. For y, I'm never going to be moving up and down, so I'll just set that to 0. And for my z value, I'm actually going to use movement.y, since that is the input that I'm getting from my vector2. Looks like I've got some compilation errors. I'm guessing I accidentally imported the system.numerics namespace. We'll go ahead and delete that from the very top. There we go, got rid of those compilation errors. And one more vector3 for the position that I'm trying to move to. So I'm going to define a new vector3 called new position. And inside this new position, I'm just going to take my current position, add my move direction that we just defined, and then times it by some sort of move speed variable that I'm yet to create, times time.delta time. Now this would work. Some time ago in a recent Unity patch, they actually changed it so you don't have to use time.fixed.delta time. Unity is smart enough to know that if I'm using time.delta time inside of a fixed update loop, it will automatically change this to time.fixed.delta time. But again, it's a good idea to always be explicit in our code, so I'm going to change this to fixed delta time. Let's just make sure we create our move speed float as a serialized field up top. So at the very tippy top, let's create a new serialized field. Find this as a float, and I'll just call it move speed. And I'll initialize that to something like 5f for now. Scrolling back down to our handle movement method, just like before, just a little performance trick. I like to times my floats before timesing it by my vector 2s. So I'm just going to wrap move speed times time dot fixed delta time, wrap it in a little parentheses before we times it by our vector 2s. We can now use new position, pass it through our rigid body.move position, and voila, we should have our player properly moving around our scene. Scrolling back up, I'm noticing just one little warning typo. I usually actually spell this with an uppercase B with a lowercase r. You'll often also see people just define it as RB for rigid body for short. I like to name it rigid body. However, I'm going to actually rename this pressing F2 to lowercase r, capital B. That will rename all of my references to my rigid body inside of this class. Great, let's give that a save and try it out back in Unity. Press play and see if we're moving around correctly. All right, we're in business. We've got our player properly moving around our game view. Things might just look ever so slightly jittery, or maybe just not that smooth. Well, why is that? If I open up my stats window, you can see I'm still getting very high FPS, sitting around 150 frames per second. So why does it just look not that smooth? Well, that's because I'm moving my game object on that fixed update cycle, which, if you remember, is not as often as the normal update cycle. You can do a little bit of a deep dive. If you actually open up your Edit Project Settings, go into your time drop down on the very left. It's the 6th from the bottom, I believe. You can see our fixed time step is set to 0.02 seconds. That means fixed update is firing every 0.02 seconds, and our game object is only moving every 0.02 seconds, regardless of actually how many frames per second we're getting. You can actually see that a little bit more clearly if you were to change this to, say, something like 0.5, for example. Let's actually try this out in our game to see what sort of differences we notice. Now when we press play, it's actually going to be a little bit even hard to see in our game view. Let's actually scroll way over here to our player in our scene view, for example. When we move, we're only actually moving the player every 0.5 seconds exactly, regardless of how many frames per second our game is actually getting. Okay, well that at least makes sense on why we were getting just a little bit of jitter before. Well, if you click your player, scroll down to your rigid body component, and you do two different things. You have to both click is kinematic to properly take advantage of our interpolate dropdown and change this from interpolate none to interpolate, just change it to interpolate, bit of a tongue twister. We can now actually see our player is properly interpolating in between the two movements. Now it can be a little bit tricky to describe. You might just have to try this for yourself, but I've got a huge input lag. If I just tap left or right, it's not actually doing anything. And even when you hold it, it kind of actually does wait about what I'd imagine is probably half a second or so, and then it interpolates the smoothness in between where our player is trying to move. If you were to change the interpolate to extrapolate, well, then it's going to actually try to extrapolate what we're trying to do and predict the future a little bit and where our rigid body is supposed to be based on our input. So for our sake and what this game is trying to be, I think we're going to get the best of both worlds. If we change this to is kinematic, interpolate to interpolate, and then just change this back in our project settings to what it was before. So I think it was 0.02. And I'm noticing when we changed our fixed time step back to what it was before, 0.02, these other values didn't actually get changed back. However, I don't really think it'll be much of an issue for us. These are just the maximum allowed time steps for both, I believe, game objects in our scene and particles time steps as well. So this might actually only be an issue if we're getting a lot of lag in our game, for example, which we might actually run into some issues later on, but we'll leave it at these settings for now. Give it a play and try it once again. Now that we have our fixed update time step back to 0.02 and we're interpolating in between movements, it both feels and looks a bit smoother to me. Great, give yourself a pat on the back for this lecture. When you're ready to move on, I'll see you in the next one.